Hello, happy Saturday to you. Tonight's slate maybe making you a little bit less happy. I'm only a 5-game slate. Really only one pitcher you feel good about, but this is the Fades and Stacks podcast, a daily fantasy whiff. So with that being said, it will be a kind of fun night because you can do things like avoid the one pitcher that every single person who's playing and most of the people who aren't playing would be playing tonight, and get yourself some stacks. And there's certainly some pitchers we can be picking on tonight because, as you know, when there's not guys you feel good about playing, you do feel good about getting the hitters against them. So you mentioned it in our earlier FanDuel podcast. You're going to win with hitters tonight. Pitcher isn't likely going to be what sets you apart. So this is going to be it's going to be fun to break these down.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, honestly, you just need a mediocre to decent showing from one of these second-tier arms, whether it's as your SP2 to Greinke on DraftKings or whether it's as your SP1 on FanDuel, your lone SP, because those bats, I mean, there's going to be some bats that go off tonight with such a crappy slate of pitchers on the hill.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to go game by game like we do each week. We'll give you whether we're playing the pitchers, whether we're not, and then if you can stack against them, and just how crazy some stacks might be. So we'll start off at the top. New York Yankees at the Baltimore Orioles. CC Sabathia against Bud Norris. And, of course, this one being in Camden Yards is going to be a higher total. 8.5 runs here. Pretty much a pick 'em. Bud Norris a very, very slight favorite. I will tell you, it says there's a 30% chance of thunderstorms early. Shouldn't matter a whole lot, but just in case, keep your eye on that because we know these thunderstorms could pop up at any time. So with that being said, feel free to get any hitters from either side you want on this one because Bud Norris, pretty awful, especially against left-handed batters. A lot of good lefties, or a couple good lefties at least, for the Yankees. On the other side, it's CC Sabathia versus the world. Anyone who hits right-handed, including you and I, is in play against CC Sabathia. So get yourself some stacks from this game.
Yeah, I mean, they often say to save your best for last, but we're coming out firing right away. My favorite stack of the night is the Orioles. It's going to probably be the most popular stack of the night, but maybe not. The Cubs are typically a pretty popular stack themselves, so you might see some other teams vying for that honor. But this is a case where you can go up and down that Orioles lineup and find spots that you'd like to stack, depending on what Buck Showalter does with the lineup. Always kind of a weird situation because Buck will actually maneuver his lineup and do managerial things, tactical things, which is weird because we're used to so many Matt Williams managers and Donnie Baseballs that it's like you have to wonder what the logic is. With Buck, at least he does good things with his lineup. So, unfortunately, we don't know exactly where people are going to slot tonight, but it's not necessarily just going to have to be a 1 through 4 stack on FanDuel or a 1 through 6 on DraftKings. You're going to be able to grab from maybe the 3 through 7 spots or wraparound stacks and things like that. So you're going to want a ton of this Orioles game. You're going to want guys like Wieters and Hardy and your big bats like Adam Jones and Manny Machado. Then you got Jimmy Paredes and Steve Pearce and Delmon Young. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. There are going to be a ton of right-handed batters in that lineup against CC tonight. So make sure you're stacking, but don't necessarily just go right to that 1 through 4 stack right away or 1 through 6 on DraftKings. That's really going to be where you're going to be able to differentiate tonight without going off of the best game.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, everyone's going to have the 2 through 5, 1 through 6, whatever it may be stack here. So maybe mix and match, go like a couple. If there's one hitter maybe in the middle that you don't feel great about, maybe Chris Davis is batting like 5th in the lefty-lefty matchup. I'm not saying to fade him, but maybe you go 1, 2, 3, and then skip him 6, 7, 8, something like that. I mean, got to get creative on a small slate, like you said. So that's the way to go. But I'll tell you the way not to go is to completely avoid this game because you can definitely get both sides. And then on the Yankees side, Chase Headley's really cheap, especially on FanDuel. Switch hitter there. Of course, Mark Teixeira and his monstrous ISO this year. You got to be considering him. Brett Gardner, I know you like as well. So all the lefty bats, especially against Bud Norris, who is just, like you mentioned, I mean, an absolute train wreck against left-handed hitters.
Yeah, and the Yankees are going to be a fun lineup where I think you can do some hooking maybe and grabbing pairs of Yankees instead of necessarily going full-blown stack. Not that a full-blown stack, there's anything wrong with that. I mean, if Bud Norris is getting rocked by the top of the order, you're getting your ducks on the pond for A-Rod. You're certainly not going to want to not have A-Rod even though he's right-handed if he's going to have runners on for him and be getting on himself. So I like the Yankees quite a bit as well tonight. Grabbing both sides of that is highly advisable.
Yeah, and I'll say this: if you're going to stack the Yankees, you may as well stack them twice. Get one with Headley, one with Alex Rodriguez, because obviously you can't play both in the same lineup.
Yep.
They're both third base eligible, so keep that in mind. Don't get frustrated about it. Just get yourself a second entry, and then everybody wins. Well, maybe not everyone, but you might win. Either way, next up, Cincinnati Reds at the Chicago Cubs. Another fun one for tonight with two pitchers we like to pick on. You got Mike Leake against Kyle Hendricks here in this one. Obviously in Wrigley Field. Unfortunately, no crazy wins in this one. Blowing left to right, or right to left, it says right now. It's going to be really humid, which is good for the ball carrying a little bit, 90%, but also 40% chance of showers and storms. Seems like there's no real risk in this game, but once again, anytime you hear thunderstorms, you gotta keep your eye on it. But this one, this one's pretty simple, really. Left-handed bats for the Cubs, plus Chris Bryant, and then on the Red side, I'm not saying I'm going out of my way to stack against Kyle Hendricks, but the way this Reds lineup has been, we talked about earlier, Brandon Phillips is hurt, Devin Mesoraco's hurt, Marlon Byrd is hurt. All these guys hurt for the Reds. You're going to have a really, really cheap stack with this Reds team. So maybe if you want to go like a combo stack and you really like the Baltimore Orioles or you like another team, stack the Orioles with the Reds. You could still get yourself, probably Zach Greinke, especially on DraftKings. Pair him with a cheaper pitcher, and then that's not a bad way to go because some of these guys like Ivan DeJesus, Eugenio Suarez, going to be really cheap tonight.
Yeah, and there's always. I mentioned liking the idea of hooking some of the Yankees tonight. This is a case where you can do your hooking with your Votto and your Todd Father basically, and yes, it'll be expensive, but you're getting the main pieces that could give Hendricks problems. So, but I would say my second favorite stack of the night is probably going to be the Cubbies. We know that Joe Maddon's not a dummy when it comes to lineup construction for the most part. So, expect the top of the order to look probably something like Fowler at the top, Rizzo hitting second, Bryant third, Montero fourth, and that's three lefties in the first four batters that Leake's going to have to navigate. Beyond that, we're looking at guys like maybe Chris Coghlan gets a lineup boost as a left-handed hitter. Starlin Castro fills a need at shortstop at a position that's just not very good. So not a bad stack to get at all. Again, one that I think will be fairly popular because there are those big bats in Rizzo and Bryant, and people like to gravitate towards those when they can.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, Chris Coghlan going to be a nice value play. And if you want, like you were mentioning, these mini stacks and things like that, getting your piece of all of them, you could use these cheap Reds hitters or even guys like Chris Coghlan as your fillers for your other stacks.
Yep.
There's going to be guys at pretty much every position that are really cheap tonight, second base, shortstop, and those are some of the thinner positions. So filling those guys in like that going to be a nice way to go. Arizona at the San Francisco Giants tonight. We've got Ryan Vogelsong against Alan Webster here, and obviously this one's in San Francisco. Very one of the better pitchers parks in the game. 7.5 run total. Ryan Vogelsong's a minus 145 favorite. Wind's blowing out to right. It says it's gusty, 10 to 20 miles an hour, so keep your eyes on that, especially with Ryan Vogelsong and his struggles with the long ball throughout his career. Second highest on the night tonight. Third highest behind Ian Kennedy and CC Sabathia, 1.41 home runs per 9. We've seen him be actually very efficient at times this year, but we've also seen the troubles with the long ball. Those aren't going away anytime soon. Got some big bats on the Arizona side. I slightly prefer stacking the Giants, as I think you do too. But, the contrarian stack, I think, tonight is the Arizona bats because they're going to be expensive, especially Paul Goldschmidt. You're certainly not stacking without Paul Goldschmidt. And then, it's not, I don't know. There's a lot of people who play, like casual players that see things like Ryan Vogelsong. They look at his game logs, and it looks like Ryan Vogelsong's been pitching well, and he hasn't been bad. But we know against big-time bats, he has big-time struggles. So I like the Arizona stack as a contrarian one tonight.
Yep, and it's got a nice combination of power and speed when you've got guys like Pollock and Goldschmidt and Tomas in it, and Ciarte leading off most likely. You've got your mix of all the things you get for fantasy scoring. Your stolen bases and your power, and so I definitely like the Diamondbacks as a contrarian stack, but if I'm only stacking one team from this game, it is going to be the Giants. they hit right-handed pitching hard. Alan Webster's been struggling at the AAA level this year, so you get to pick on a guy who really wasn't pitching well below the majors this year. And the Giants certainly have some hitters that are capable of giving him some problems. And the one nice thing about this Giants lineup is they put the ball in play quite a bit, and you get a few hits strung together. Maybe Posey goes long ball or Belt goes long ball. All of a sudden, these guys that were just getting on with singles and walks and avoiding strikeouts, or even reaching by error, if you get brought around for a run, you end up getting points out of that. I mean, just putting the ball in play really is helpful for this Giants lineup, and so they do make for an interesting stack. One of the better offenses in baseball against right-handed pitching this year.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up that point. I mean, the Giants didn't even start out the season particularly well on the offensive end, but now they're sitting at 4th in the league in Team WOBA, 2nd in WRC+. They've got a 144 ISO, and like you mentioned, putting the ball in play, 16.8% strikeout rate, 7.4% walk rate. I mean, if they're not putting the ball in play, then they're walking at a decent clip as well. So this is definitely a fun team to stack, and one that just continues to be criminally underowned, especially in tournaments. So I'm with you on that. Giants going to be a fun stack to play around with tonight. All right, Oakland at the Los Angeles Angels here. C.J. Wilson versus Kendall Graveman. And this is an Angels team that was really, really bad. I mean, they were down there with the Phillies. Bless you. Down there with the Phillies, among worst in the league against right-handed pitching earlier in the season. Really starting to get it going. A lot of that due to the fact that Albert Pujols and Mike Trout may be the hottest duo of teammates in the entire world. I mean, they are right now. There's really no argument there. 7.5 run total in this one. C.J. Wilson, a minus 130 favorite. With limited options tonight, I mean, you have to consider C.J. Wilson as a lefty against Oakland as one of your pitchers tonight. You're reluctant to do so, but they're not very good against lefties. But then you look at the Angels against righties. They've moved up quite a bit. You got Mike Trout and Albert Pujols. And you know what? If you don't want to go a full-blown stack against Kendall Graveman, who he hasn't been terrible this year, but he's given up a nice high WOBA to righties of 323 so far this season. He's been worse against lefties, though, 378. Not a lot of good lefties here, but I think my favorite way to go here is going to be a little trio, like a stack of 3-man with Cole Calhoun and Mike Trout and Albert Pujols. Maybe figure out whoever's going to be batting. Like, for instance, if Eric Ibar's leading off, that's all well and good for runs scored, maybe a double. But if I'm stacking guys with power, and Eric Ibar's not going to be part of my stack tonight, more than likely.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that assessment. Your trio, I think, is the ideal way to go. Your Trout, Calhoun, and Pujols. But yeah, beyond that, the rest of the Angels lineup isn't terribly tantalizing or palatable at this point. The A's, you're certainly not stacking them. As you said, C.J. Wilson, usable. In fact, he's my second favorite pitcher on the slate, and probably my favorite GPP play, price considered, because you really have to have that money for these stacks and these bats. So I can't see myself using many shares of Greinke in GPPs. It's going to probably be Wilson. Sizable betting favorite, should get the win, should give you a quality star. Not going to score you a ton of points because he doesn't have a huge strikeout ceiling, but going to get you just enough to complement these stacks quite nicely, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's a viable way to go. And then one more game on the docket here. Los Angeles Dodgers at the San Diego Padres. Greinke versus Kennedy. And, a couple of years back, this would look like a great pitcher's duel. But Ian Kennedy, I won't say has fallen off the face of the earth, but the struggles that he's always had with the long ball have been highlighted in a big way this year. Over 2 home runs per 9 innings. Obviously, he hasn't thrown a ton of innings this year yet, but he's a sizable underdog here. 6.5 run total. Greinke minus 165 favorite. No surprise there at all. Greinke's the guy that you want in your cash games. I will say this. I probably will not be playing Greinke in GPPs. I'll throw him in some on DK just because you have to play 2 pitchers and you really have limited options. But on FanDuel, I don't really see any merit to playing Zach Greinke in GPPs. Not to say that he won't be the highest scoring pitcher, because he probably will be. But you're not doing yourself any favors by playing the pitcher that 60% of the field is going to have.
That and I mean, we're not talking about a Kershaw like ceiling here either. We're not talking about a guy that's likely to go out there and strike out a dozen batters and give you a 25-point effort. If we were, it would be a little bit easier to justify spending that five-figure price tag in GPPs, but I can't see it. I think we're talking about more along the lines of a 16 to 18 point scoring pitcher, and if you can get a dozen points from C.J. Wilson and pocket the rest of that money to spend on your big bats, that's the way to go. And so for GPP, he's not going to be a big Greinke guy tonight. He is the obvious play. I think a lot of people are, if you're just looking to cash Greinke, fine. You're probably going to get maybe a back end cash. But if you're going to do that, you're better off in cash games anyway. If you're looking to win these things, you're probably going to have to spin down to one of these cheaper arms and then really spend on your stacks and spend on your star level hitters.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, like you said, as you're going through your tournaments, DraftKings, yeah, it's certainly plausible you see Zach Greinke on the winning lineup.
Yes.
But on FanDuel, since he's so heavily owned, I mean, that strikeout rate's down a lot this season. It's just at 21.9%. So, yes, he has upside, but he doesn't have an enormous ceiling, like you said. So, he's a guy you're going to consider, but I don't know. Take that for how you will. I won't have him in any tournaments tonight on single-pitcher websites.
Yeah, as far as stacking goes for this game, Dodgers look like a viable stack against Kennedy.
Especially lefties.
Yeah, I mean, your Peterson, your Gonzalez, you're going to really want those guys in there. But some of those righties sprinkled in there, the Puigs and the Howie Kendricks of the world, they also make for strong plays given who they're around in the lineup and the chance that Kennedy just has a complete meltdown again.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that being said, that's going to wrap things up for us here on this short slate. Follow us on Twitter at DF Cafe, subscribe to this YouTube channel, and check out all of our great new tools. We've got projections, cheat sheets, a lot of great content to help you win on dailyfantasycafe.com.